This is Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned, chapter Man Gone, section 2. He watched her go through the tiny garden and into the alley that ran past his gate. She half turned to catch a glimpse or a look of him as she went. A sideways look and half a kiss, Socrates thought. Maybe if I wait another 20 years, I might get a hug too. He went back into his kitchen feeling exhausted, the way he did on weekdays after taking the bus home from work. He sat down, took a deep breath, and then said, "You could come on out, Howard." Howard Shakur came out of Socrates' sleeping room. The look on his fat face would have scared most men, but Socrates didn't care. "You're gonna fight me, boy?" the ex-con asked simply. "Because if you are, and I hope you get some..." Let me start over with that. "Because if you are, I hope you have some insurance for the babies." "What do you mean by letting her in here and talking to her like you did?" "Do you want some whiskey, Howard?" Socrates gestured a tired hand toward the cabinet under his sink. "There's some whiskey down under there." Howard squatted down and came out with a fifth of PM whiskey. A fifth is a bottle, a type of bottle. He stood up, making a fat man's grunt, and took 2 glasses from the shelf. "What do you mean by telling Karina all that?" Howard said as he settled into the chair his wife had been sitting in. "I didn't say anything to her that I didn't say to you an hour ago. I told you you were a fool." Socrates took a short swig or drink of the cheap whiskey and grimaced. That means to make a frown face. "But it was the way you were talking, man. Were you trying to get over on my woman? Were you flirting with her?" You're right, I was." "What do you think, Howard? A woman like that? Is she..." Let me think about this. "A woman like she looks, is she going to go out and bust a gut working full time? Is she going to work really hard? That stuff is like gold." "That's my wife you're talking about, man," Howard Shakur said. He downed his glass and poured another. "No, it isn't." Socrates shook his head and put his glass down. "Uh-uh. What do you mean she isn't mine? Whose wife is she if she isn't mine?" With speed that Socrates rarely showed, he snapped forward and caught Howard by the wrist. "Ow!" Howard shouted. He tried to pull away, but the older man's grip was too strong for him. "Let me tell you something, boy. As long as you're out here, away from that girl, she belongs to whomever she wants. There isn't any man that's going to say, 'Nah, I better stay away because Howard might decide to come back one day.' Forget that. A woman like Corey makes a man boil." Socrates pushed Howard back so hard that he flew over backwards in his chair. Howard jumped to his feet, ready to fight. Socrates rose to meet him. His blood was hot. He was angry. He wanted to do something strong. If it wasn't with that girl, at least he could break Howard's jaw. But Howard hadn't had quite enough whiskey to be a fool. He snorted, but that was the most of it. "I thought you were my friend," Howard said. "You don't have any friends when it comes to a woman like Corey, Howard. That's what I was trying to tell you before she got here. That's a woman you have there, man. She's not a dog. She isn't a car for you to park somewhere and walk off on. She's a woman, and she needs her man. Now, she prefers that man to be you, at least right now. But you know, I will be over there day after tomorrow. I will. And then you could be free, and I could be happy." "That isn't right, brother." Howard shook his head. "It isn't right at all. I come here and tell you my problem, And then you're going to run out after my woman, after my wife? You said you don't want her. Isn't that what you said? I said that I couldn't live up there anymore. She's always dogging me, nagging me, telling me what to do. Howard set his chair up and sat back down. He poured more whiskey and glowered at the tabletop. That means to look angrily at the tabletop. You see, Socrates said, he held his hand against his chest, I don't mind that kind of dogging. I don't mind a woman telling me when I'm wrong. Does she want to kick my butt and then kiss my lip? Okay, I'll be the first one in line. But she's my wife, Howard said. Then get home and act like it. You can't tell me what to do, Howard growled. I'll go home when I want to. If you still have a home to go to, Socrates said. They drank the bottle clear, which means they emptied it. Howard had more whiskey, but Socrates felt its effects too. He muttered, If you can't show a fool the door, then you have to show him the floor. What did you say? Howard asked angrily. Forget you, said Socrates. I'm going to get out of here, said Howard, but he made no move to lift himself from the chair. Howard, Socrates said, do you ever think about Karina with some other brother? The younger man glowered but stayed quiet. You know, Socrates continued, some little dude. And here you're... Let's not read that. Howard opened his mouth to get more breath. You know, that ain't too bad. Socrates held the empty bottle upside down over his glass. After a moment, he realized that there were no more drops coming. No, not too bad. Because you're going to find some other girl to sing for you, and you're going to believe that the new girl has a better song. But you might not be thinking about what's going to happen after Karina finishes with her other boyfriend. He's going to clean himself up with one of your shirts, and then he's going to go in the other room with your kids, Winnie and little Howard, and they're going to jump up saying, Daddy, Daddy. Socrates sat back. When his hand left the table, the bottle fell and shattered on the floor. Both men looked at the broken glass. But you're in a better place than me, Howard. You're better off than me. Because even if you are a fool, at least you had a woman who had your babies. Even if you're a fool and never get to see your kids again, at least you had them. Howard fell forward out of his chair. He went down on one knee and then stood up grunting. Socrates heard him go, but didn't see him leave. His eyes were wandering across the tabletop, looking at the walnut finish of the paper glued to the cardboard sheet. Section 3. Socrates Fortwell, a convicted murderer who was released on his birthday after 27 years in prison, washed up using the water out of his kitchen sink. He splashed cologne or perfume for men from a sample bottle that he'd bought off a man selling odds and ends, which means just random things, from a blanket on the street. He wore black jeans and a drab or dull green turtleneck shirt. In the pockets of his army jacket, he had 5 Hershey bars with almonds and a Mexican-made sterling silver ring inlaid with blue stones. He'd bought the ring from the man who'd sold him the cologne. Socrates walked 11 long blocks to Howard and Karina Shakur's little stucco house on 121st Street. Stucco is a type of building material. He hadn't heard from either one of them in a few days, but that was no surprise. Socrates didn't have a phone. Howard was probably still mad at him, and Karina had a family to take care of. There was a plastic tricycle lying on the tiny porch. A tricycle's like a bicycle, but it has 3 wheels. The screen was shut, but the door beyond it was open. Socrates felt his heart pumping. He waited a second and then knocked on the aluminum frame. "Mama," Winnie shouted from somewhere inside. The door! Karina looked good in her orange house dress. When she saw Socrates, a smile filled her soft features. She opened her mouth to say something. Socrates hoped that it would be an invitation, but instead she called out, "Howard! Howard! Socrates is here!" She unlatched the screen and ushered him in. He sat down on a spindly or not very large sofa couch that had thin pine legs. Spindly means like thin. Winnie was playing with a doll on the floor, and little Howard was digging a finger in his nose and gaping at the powerful newcomer. Gaping means to look at someone with awe. Howard came out of the kitchen and saw Socrates, and Socrates rose to meet him. "Hey," Howard said, and they shook hands. "Hey, how are you doing?" Socrates replied. "I just come by to see how you folks are doing." "We're fine now, Mr. Fortwell," Karina said. She was beaming or smiling at Socrates. "Yeah," Howard said. "I got a job at Pronto Pizza." "Really?" "Yeah. They just lost an assistant manager, and with my experience with the city, they hired me on probation. Probation means trial. They only pay $6.25 an hour right now, but it could go up to $8.85 or $8.85 in 6 months if I work out." All the time he spoke, Howard watched Socrates distrustfully. "Sit down," Karina said. Howard took the chair facing the couch, and Karina ran into the kitchen to bring out a kitchen chair. She was smiling and happy. "What shift do they have you on?" Socrates asked as he settled back down. 3 to 11, but I could get days if I get seniority. That means if he works there long enough, he could work during the day instead of from the afternoon until the evening. I could be a manager if it works out." "That's really good, Howard." Socrates meant the words, but he could only whisper them. "When Howard came home, I told him what you said, Mr. Fortwell." Karina smiled. "I told him I could get a man to work 2 jobs for me." She reached out to hold Howard's hand. "Yeah," Socrates said. "Howard isn't any fool, is he?" "No, sir." "Winnie?" "Yeah," the little girl answered. She was sitting on the corner talking to her black baby doll. "Do you want some chocolate?" The girl whirled around and looked at her mother. Karina nodded, and the little girl did too. When Socrates took the Hershey bar from his jacket, little Howard started whining and holding his hands up over his head. "Caddy, caddy," or candy, candy, the baby cried. "Share with your brother now," Howard said. "Okay, Daddy." They visited for a while, and then Socrates rose. Karina told him that they were going to have a dinner the following Sunday with their parents, and that he should come too. "You would like my father, Socko," Howard said, smiling for the first time. "He's old, like you." As he walked away from the door, he heard, "Bye, Mr. Fortwell," and turned to see Winnie, with Karina standing over her at the screen. Section 4. On the way home, Socrates saw a round dinette table, which is a small dinner table, et means small, with 3 broken legs lying on the street. It was made from maple wood and deeply scarred or scratched. Socrates hefted the table on his back, using the leather strap from his pants to hold it around the one good leg. He put the other legs under his arm and carried the heavy table for 9 blocks. He made a deal with himself that he could keep the table if he could walk the whole distance without putting it down. His deal included the special circumstance, or the special condition, that he would accept help if it was offered. But nobody offered. No one even seemed to notice Socrates and his labor or his work. The last 3 blocks had his lungs hurting and his knee joints were on fire. He almost dropped the whole thing when he reached the wooden gate of his garden. But he held on with the grip of his baby finger of the left hand. He made it through to the back door and then let go. Socrates came to dinner the following Sunday. The elder Mr. Shakur was as fat as Howard. They had a good time together, and when Socrates left, he told Karina that he'd invite them over to dinner sometime soon. For the next 3 weeks, Socrates worked on the table. He used carpenter's glue and metal ties to restructure the broken and splintered legs, so he repaired the legs. He cut grooves in all four legs and the tabletop. A groove is like a I don't know, this right between the book here is a groove. And then he glued them together using a bag full of sand to hold it all down. He sanded the wood and puttied the gashes. Putty is a type of cream that you can fill in a space with and then smooth it out. And when it dries, it's hard. He restained the table, or restained the table, means it's kind of like painting it, and brushed on polyurethane, which is a chemical that puts a plastic coating over it. So he restained the table and brushed on polyurethane to seal and protect his work. Every night after coming home from his job, boxing groceries at Bounty Supermarket, Socrates worked the wood. He'd go to bed rubbing his fingertips together, feeling the hot blisters of hard work. When he was finished, he walked over to the Shakur residence and invited the whole family over to dinner. He prepared greens and rice and beef tripe cooked with tomato sauce, garlic, and vodka. The tripe was a recipe that he got from the butcher at Bounty. Tripe is stomach, or even intestines. He served the meal on his rebuilt maple table. He had pies and ice cream for the children, Seagrams and soda water for their parents. Seagrams is a type of alcohol. Howard wasn't mad at Socrates anymore. He had his wife and job. He had his kids. The food was good, and Karina drank more than she was used to. She talked silly baby talk with the children and made eyes at both of the men. Socrates stood up straight from the table and said, "Karina, I have something for you." "Oh," she said, holding her head at a slant. "And what is that?" "This here table that I found and put back together again," Socrates said. "I want to give it to you all." "No," Karina said, maybe even sobered up a little bit. "That's too much. It's so nice." "Yeah," Howard said. "Yeah," echoed Socrates. "I found it and put it back together. And all the time I was thinking about the two of you, about how I wanted to say how wonderful your wife is, Howard, and how any time you want to walk out or give up, you could look at the hard work I put in this table." Socrates was talking to Howard, but his eyes were locked with Karina's. "Because you know I'm out here waiting, and you can't slip up once." Little Howard made a wild scream just then and laughed. Karina turned her own amazed smile on her son and picked him up. He slapped her on the nose and laughed again, but she ignored it. "Do you feel up to it, Howard?" Socrates asked his friend. "Up to what?" "We've got to carry it over to your house. Turn it upside down and it should be easy." "You really want to give us this?" Howard asked. He was squinting at his friend. "Just think of me when you sit down to dinner, man. That's all. Think of me out here, and you in there, safe and warm with your family."